Chapter 29 Lady O'Hara Triumphant Part 1 of Black Moth by Georgette read4LibriVox.org into the public domain. After spending a restless night, starting at every sound, and hearing the hours strike slowly away, Lady O'Hara arose, not a whit refreshed, and considerably more ill at ease than she had been before. During the night she had imagined all sorts of impossible horrors to have befallen her husband, and if, when the reassuring light of day had come, the horrors had somewhat dispersed, enough remained to cause her an anxious morning as she alternated between the hall window and the gate. No less worried was Jim Salter. He had returned from Fittering last night to find his master and Sir Miles gone, Lady O'Hara in a state of frightened bewilderment, and the house in a whirl. No one, least of all poor Molly, seemed to know exactly where the two men had gone. All she knew was that they had come back upon a scene of turmoil, with Mr. Bowley in the midst of a small crowd of excited servants. Her husband had elbowed his way through, and into his ears had Mr. Bowley poured his story. Then O'Hara seemed to catch the excitement, and she had been hurried into the house with the hasty explanation that Jack was off after Devil, who had caught Diana, and he must come to the rescue. 10 minutes after, she had an alarming vision of him galloping off down the drive, his sword at his side and pistols in the saddle holsters. The poor little lady had sent an imploring cry after him, checked almost before it had left her lips. Afterwards she wished it had never been uttered, and rather hoped that it had escaped O'Hara's ears. Salter arrived not half an hour later, and his feelings when told that his beloved master had ridden off in search of a fight may be more easily imagined than described. He was all for setting out in his wake, but her ladyship strongly vetoed the plan, declaring that Sir Miles would be rescue enough, and she was not going to be left entirely without protectors. Jim was far too respectful to point out that there were 5 able-bodied men, not counting himself, in the house, but as his master had left no instructions for him, he capitulated. He proved naught but a Job's comforter the next day, for when my lady pessimistically premised that both Carstairs and her husband were undoubtedly hurt, he did not, as she expected he would, strive to reassure her, but gave a gloomy assent. Whereupon she cast an indignant glance in his direction, and turned her back. At 4 in the afternoon they were both in the hall, anxiously watching the drive. "To be sure, 'tis monstrous late," remarked Molly, with wide, apprehensive eyes. "Yes, my lady." If naught were amiss, they should have been back by now, surely." "Yes, indeed, my lady." Lady O'Hara stamped her foot. "Don't say yes," she cried. Jim was startled. "I beg pardon, my lady." "You are not to say yes. After all, they may have gone a long way. They may be tired. Jenny may have gone lame. Anything may have happened." "Yes, I mean certainly, your ladyship," hastily amended Jim. "In fact, I should not be surprised, and they were not hurt at all." He shook his head despondently, but luckily for him the lady failed to notice it, and continued with an airy cheerfulness, "For my husband has often told me what an excellent swordsman Mr. Carstairs is, and your ladyship forgets his wound." What she might have been constrained to reply to this is not known, for at that moment came the sound of coach wheels on the gravel. With one accord she and Salter flew to the door, and between them wrenched it open, just as a gentleman's travelling coach, postillioned by men in gold and black, emblazoned with the Wincham arms, drew up at the door. My lady was down the steps in the twinkling of an eye, almost before one of the grooms had opened the door to offer an arm to my lord. Carstairs sprang lightly out, followed by O'Hara, seemingly none the worse for wear. Molly ran straight into her husband's arms, regardless of the servants, hugging him. Jim Salter hurried up to my lord. "You are not hurt, sir?" he cried. Carstairs handed him his hat and cloak. "Not to speak of, Jim, but Everard well nigh finished me for all that." He laughed at Jim's face of horror, and turned to Molly, who, having satisfied herself that her husband was quite uninjured, and had never once been in danger of his life, had come towards him, full of solicitude for his shoulder. End of Chapter 29, Part 1. Read by Sibylla Denton.